Morning, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. Looks like everyone's just joining in now. So looking forward to getting the chance to talk to you guys all about QuickBooks Desktop here, and hopefully everyone learn a little something. Some of you in the past are probably used to Christina doing this presentation, the other principal in the small business department. So she asked for a little help this year and I happily offered. So look forward to talking to you, and you're stuck with me now. A little background on myself. My name is Adam Henning. I've been working with the small businesses to assist in accounting and advisory since 2009. I came to Veracruz in 2017 with the Radke and Schlesner acquisition, and current position is a principal in the small business department, and I just enjoy working streamlining bookkeeping and accounting procedures and making sure we're utilizing the most tax efficient plan for clients. When I'm not doing the accounting thing, enjoy getting on the golf course, and I don't think there's going to be too much time left, so hoping to get out there at least 1 or 2 more times this year. This is also going to be probably one of my first presentations I've done in a really long time, so bear with me if there's any bumps along the road here. Also, I just want to, I heard somewhere, as long as you get one thing out of a presentation, it's worthwhile. So I'm hoping at least everyone here gets at least one thing out of this QuickBooks Desktop presentation to make their life easier in their everyday operations of QuickBooks. Everyone on this chat is going to be on different levels of the QuickBooks spectrum of knowledge. Spoiler, I'm not normally in the day-to-day operations of QuickBooks, so if anyone here has any helpful tips, please chat in. And also for the chat, if you could just chat to everyone when you're chatting any questions, that way we can all see them. And if you need to, different parts of this may not apply to everyone. So if there's anything you need to take a break during any of those parts, feel free to do that. Getting into it today, the plan is to do a general overview of QuickBooks and just going through some tips and tricks along the way. And we're going to focus on planning and budgeting, bank feeds, inventory, and job costing features. At the end, we'll go through any questions. I don't think we'll be running out of time, so should be plenty of time for that. I will also be demonstrating the QuickBooks as we go through this instead of going through the slide presentations. So you can follow along there. And then kind of jumping right into it, I thought I'd first go over kind of something big that's new with the QuickBooks Desktop for the 2022 product. So they are transitioning everything over to a subscription billing, starting with the QuickBooks Premier and Premier 2022 and Pro. Enterprise has been on subscription billing for a while, but this is going to be something new for the Pro and Premier products. And it's going to be, so you have until December 10th to purchase the 2021 product and still get the 3-year maintenance subscription or maintenance without having to do an annual subscription every year. But any purchasing the 2022 product will result in a subscription package. So QuickBooks is kind of over the last couple of years, probably more than a couple of years, really been pushing their QuickBooks Online product. And I think this is just one more step to kind of push that, because with the subscription billing on the desktop product, the online has kind of become more cost effective, when in the past it was always more expensive to do the online for some of these Pro and Premier type QuickBooks products. So that's going to be one of the biggest changes with QuickBooks here. I am going to now just share my screen. So hopefully everyone can see the QuickBooks Desktop product now. I'm going to turn off my video too, so you don't have to look at me. So I'm going to be using, as I said, the Premier 2022 Desktop as an example, there's not going to be many changes from the other previous year Premier products. I'll probably switch to Enterprise a little later down the road for the job costing features. So the first thing I was going to talk about is the planning and budgeting. And this is something that probably doesn't get used a whole lot, and clients probably don't do as much as they could. It's a useful tool, and it is helpful just to do a comparison versus your budgets, and it's pretty easy to do in QuickBooks. So the first thing you kind of go into is this company planning and budgeting, set up budgets. And this one already has an example of a budget that's set up for you. I'm just going to create a new budget here. And when you hit create new budget, you can pick which year the budget's for, do a profit or loss budget or a balance sheet budget. Most likely it's going to be a profit and loss budget. Hit next, and then you can get more advanced into customers, job, and classes. I'm just going to do no additional criteria. And you can create this from scratch, which would be quite a bit of work probably, but it can be done. Or you can just base it off last year's actual data, and then it'll populate everything for you. And then when you're in here, if you wanted to change anything, you can overwrite here, just put in the dollar amounts. And then down here, there's some useful tools where you can just copy that across so you don't have to key it in every single time cell here. And you can just adjust these row amounts. You want to start the first month or second month, and then you can increase it either by a percentage, increase or decrease by a percentage, or an amount. And then that would change everything in all the cells there for you. So once you have a budget in there, in the reports section, go to budgets and forecasts. Now the budget overview report keeps popping up on another screen. Just go with the one that they used. Now this just shows you what your budget amounts are for that budget and no actual amounts. So if you're just reviewing to make sure everything looks accurate for what you entered, this is something you can pull up. Other than that, probably not a very useful report. One other thing too that I always like to show people in QuickBooks is under the lists or view, this open window list. This just pops this window open where you can flip between open windows here. I tend to have a lot of screens open in my desktop, so it's very nice to just switch between them as I'm going. So then some of the other budget reports, let me get this thing out of my way. Apologize for this. So the budget versus actual is going to be the most useful report here when you're entering budgets. And so here it's going to give you your actual results, your budget amount, and then your over or under budget. And this is defaulting to a monthly report. So here you can, in the show columns button, change this to total if you're looking for it. You can change it to quarter and do it total just so we can see here. So here you can just see what your actual results are versus your budget to kind of just make sure things are in line and nothing's drastically different than what you expected for the year. So it's really as simple as that, just putting a budget and comparing it to your actual results. If it's useful for you, I'd recommend implementing it. Not everyone's probably gonna have a budget, but if you just base it off prior years, it could be a useful tool within QuickBooks. And then thought I'd just touch quickly on, they also have one, a forecasting tool, which think about a budget or forecast, it's pretty much the same concept. Forecast is more what you predict in the future, where budget's what you're kind of budgeting for. So works the same way, just different wording for it. So any questions on the budgeting? Doesn't look like it. The next thing I was going to get into is the bank feeds, which if anyone's used or seen the QuickBooks Online product, the bank feeds is something that's utilized a lot. Desktop, I haven't seen it used as much, but it doesn't mean that it shouldn't be used. Now, pretty much the bank feeds, it's just a way to pull data from your bank directly, be it automatically syncing with the bank or you downloading transactions from the bank to import into this bank feeds area. And with QuickBooks Desktop, not every bank offers this option. It's also they may charge a fee with it, depending. But if you go to the bank feeds area, you can look at this participating financial institutions. And this is where you can look to see which banks offer which services. Just click on any of these. So this one offers the Web Connect, which we'll get into in a little bit. But sometimes you have to contact the bank just to see what's all needed with it. But that's the first step, just making sure your bank offers any services like this. So in the bank feeds area, once you get all that done, you would need to set up the bank feeds, which we can't do in a sample company. It needs to be done in a live file. One other thing too to note on the bank feeds is you do need to have the online credentials for the setup of that with your bank, because it basically, you log in and then it goes in and grabs the transactions through your online logins. So getting that in, so the sample company has a few set up. So in this bank feed center, you can see it has these accounts set up here as examples. So this bank feeds area, kind of just to simplify it, is you pull in the transactions from the bank, and then this is almost like a holding area for you to review those transactions and then either match them to your any current transactions or add them. You can ignore them, but it's basically just a holding pattern, and then it brings them in to here. And one way you know in your chart of accounts if you have this set up or not, there will be a little lightning bolt next to the account in the chart of accounts. So if you just go in here, you can kind of see these bank feed settings and kind of what it's doing. Getting back to the bank feeds area. And this is great. We've normally seen this work the best with credit card accounts. So to automatically bring in credit card charges, just because there can be so many and it's time consuming to enter those. Where it doesn't work great is entering any deposits. You want to make sure you match those, which we'll get into a little bit here. Same with checks. You're going to match those because most of those are going to be printed from your QuickBooks already. It would work well with ACH withdrawals, and a few other just automatic withdrawal type transactions. So as I said, the setup is two different ways. So there's the direct connect or the web connect, and kind of the difference is they're not all going to have it, but the direct connect is where it automatically grabs the transactions from the bank. The web connect is where you go to your bank, download transaction history, and then that's when you would import them through a web connect file. So that's how you would do that. When it's set up as direct connect, it's automatically linked in your QuickBooks. So you would just hit this refresh account and it'll pull all the transactions in. And then once you have pulled those transactions in, what you do is it'll have a transaction list here. So then it'll list all the different transactions it's pulled in that are waiting to be assigned to a matched account or to import into your QuickBooks. So none of these are affecting your QuickBooks financials within this bank feeds area. So here's where you can, it's got them all in here. You can put in a payee, which account you want it to go to, class if needed. But with the checks, you probably aren't going to want to be adding those. Those would be matched to something you already have in your QuickBooks because you would have printed that check already. So on the right, there's more details here where you can add more details, or they also have the select bills to be marked as paid. And here's where you can type in account and you can add this. Again, this would most likely be matched to something you already have in there. So you would match to existing transaction. This is just an example, so there's probably not anything going to be matched, but normally there you would show a $850 payment with check number 243, and then you would just confirm a match. This doesn't match the amount, so it can't be done, but so those are the matchings. Same with deposits. Deposits are sometimes already added, so you would match that. If they're not, they have more details here where you could look to see what either undeposited funds are still sitting out there, or what open invoices you can directly apply that to. And then, so something like an ATM withdrawal is something you would just add. So you could put an account in here, and then probably want to add more details and put a memo on what that ATM withdrawal was for. So that's kind of basics on the bank feeds area. Now this is one where I've seen it also get the user in trouble because you can keep adding these accounts without matching, and then you just have all kinds of duplicate transactions. And if you aren't using it properly, it's more harm than good. The other thing that's nice about it is too, when you match or add these things, when you go to do a bank reconciliation, it'll already have those items reconciled for you. So it makes the reconciliation process smoother. So those are the bank feeds. Again, this is a tool that's I've seen used much more in the QuickBooks Online environment than the QuickBooks Desktop environment, but still a good tool. Any questions on the bank feeds? No questions on the bank feeds. So then I think getting into the backbone of the QuickBooks platform is going to be going through the items and types of items and kind of how the items work. So items are pretty much how everything is run in QuickBooks. Items are required on certain forms such as invoices, sales receipts, estimates, credit memos. Also on purchase orders, items are required. They're optional. You can just go straight to expense accounts using bills, credit cards, or checks. So just because they're used so extensively, it's very important that these are set up properly and kind of perform the following functions. They make it easier to fill out sales forms, so you don't have to kind of rekey same information. They'll have saved descriptions in the item, depending on the item you're using. They also, so these items are linked to the accounts in the chart of accounts, so it does all the back end accounting for you. Just important to have everything linked properly. This is also how you track inventory and other certain quantities of things, and they provide details so you can get more detailed reports on items versus just using your standard profit and loss statements or balance sheet amounts. So that's kind of just a quick summary of items in QuickBooks. Getting into more detail, I thought we would just go over all the different types of items quickly. And so here you can see the type. I'll just click on these as I kind of am going in the sample company here. So the first item type is going to be this service type. And this is used, if you're selling services or purchasing services, it's going to be the services are also used. So if you're using timesheets or employee tracking, you can add these service types to the employee timesheets that code certain time to specific jobs based on the item. And getting into all of these items, there's going to be a little box here. It might say something different for each of them, but this box allows you to assign an expense account and an income account to each item, which is normally you're going to want this box checked if you're using this item for sales, invoices, or receipts, and also purchasing this item. So here you just put in the item name, number, if you have any units of measure. And then once I check that box, it popped open. Here is where you can put a description. So this is what would pop up on any of this would be on your invoices or sales transactions. And then if you're purchasing it, so if you wanted a different description versus what the name is, and then you can put a default cost in, not necessary. And then the expense account here, you would pick which expense account you want this to go to every time you purchase it. And that's important because that's where it's going to go. You can't really change that on the bill or purchase order and how you're entering this. So this is where you're gonna see where that is going. Same thing goes for the sales side of things. Here you got to go into construction or design income. And again, you can leave the sales price blank. So that's, like I said, should mostly be checked, I would say, in most cases. So that's a service item. Then getting into, the inventory parts is where you're actually going to be tracking inventory in QuickBooks, is when you would use these inventory parts. And this is kind of similar look to everything. You're going to have the item name. If you have a sub item, you can add a manufacturer's part number, then the units of measure. Same description here. So this is going to have kind of 3 accounts it links to. You're going to have the cost of sales account here on the purchase information. sales, you're going to have the income account it goes to. And then this is also going to hit to an inventory account. So when you purchase this item, you're going to credit AP or cash and then debit the inventory item. And then when you sell this on an invoice, it's going to create an AR and then the sales amount. And then at the time of the invoice is when it's going to relieve this inventory account and hit cost of goods sold. There's going to be kind of a double entry on the sales side when you're using these inventory parts. And there's also some custom fields here that you can use. And the custom fields would be used, you could have some better reporting options when using these custom fields for filtering. This is the premier version. So there's, I believe, only 2 custom fields. When you get to enterprise, you can start using more custom fields here. And you can change these up. So in the define fields, you can change the naming of these custom fields. So then you have inventory assembly items. And this is going to be, so if you have assembling an item made up of other components, here you have a door kit. So this is you're going to be picking out all the different other inventory parts that make up this assembly item. And again, you have a cost of sales account and an income account, and then the inventory account. So pretty much what happens here is when you're ready to assemble this item, all of these different components are going to be decreased at the time of assembly, and then you create one assembly inventory item for this interior door kit. So just tracking on how the inventory is set up, and then you would sell the door kit versus the individual components here. And again, this is if you're doing inventory tracking in QuickBooks along with the inventory parts. So then you have the non-inventory parts. So these parts are used, they don't do any tracking of inventory. They use it if you buy and sell, kind of like the service items we were looking at. And again, this box here, you can pick a cost account and then also an income account. And then these, so this would be normally you use this and then you're doing your inventory tracking in other software or off of QuickBooks Online. So this isn't hitting any balance sheet inventory accounts. There would most likely be a periodic adjustment on the inventory when using the non-inventory parts. And kind of, as long as you're doing inventory correctly, this is another thing, inventory kind of with the bank fees, if inventory is done improperly, it can kind of screw up the QuickBooks a bit also. So this is one way when you're not doing inventory to set up those items. And then you just have these other charge types. So this could be anything from, shipping, delivery to finance charges, however you want to do it. Again, you can click that button and create a cost account and an income account. And some of these can be somewhat interchangeable, another charge or these non-inventory parts or service. It's not going to be the end of the world if it's set up as a different type. It will most likely be doing the same. You'll get the same outcome. And then they have subtotal items. Pretty much what this is, you just create the subtotal, and then when you put this on an invoice or other item, it takes everything above the subtotal item up until if you had any other subtotals, and it just subtotals is all in a line. So you have a nice total if you need to apply a discount or other charge to that subtotal. Summarize things up. And then, then we have groups. So groups are not the same as inventory assembly items, which I'll kind of go over a little more detail in a little bit, kind of what the differences are. But these groups are kind of when you use the same items together a lot. So to kind of save time, like here, it looks like there's labor always added to some of this rough lumber for these custom items. So here you can kind of just have those all in a group. So then when you go to invoice it, these will all pop up. So you're gonna have to keep typing those in. So the groups, I believe, can add up to 50 items, so the inventory assembly can add a little bit more, 100 in Premier and I believe 500 in Enterprise. But this you can also, so you can either choose to print these items in the group if you want to show everything, or you can select not to print these. So depending on what you're trying to accomplish there, sometimes you don't want to show the customer all the detail, so you wouldn't print those. Let's go to a different one here. So here they have kind of a listing of all the different parts that make up the remodel, and they printed it. They have it showing as printing in the group there. Then there's a discount item. So this is a pretty straightforward. Just put a discount on how much you want of a discount on your invoices, and then you can code it to discounts given account. And then they have these payment accounts, which basically would be for customer deposits. Kind of along those lines too, I thought I would just bring up quickly the fact, so if you are someone that receives customer deposits, so if you have an account set up, a liability account for these customer deposits, you can actually, I don't think many people think about reconciling items other than, their bank accounts and credit card transactions, but it is useful. So if you have this customer deposit account set up, the money's going in and then coming out once the final invoice is issued, but you can actually, you can pretty much reconcile any asset liability account. So I don't have any activity in this customer deposit account, but you would just go in the reconcile and customer deposits, pick an ending balance of 0, and then you would just kind of pick and choose the debits and credits that coincide with each other. And then basically anything that's unreconciled should match your customer deposit balance for that time. So just something to think about if you're doing the customer deposits, kind of get a nice report then that shows what your outstanding deposits are. And then I'm not going to get into sales tax items or any of these sales tax group items. So then kind of just going over some of the common mistakes that happen when setting up items. One of the big ones is if you're not actually tracking inventory or ever started with any inventory counts and you set up everything as inventory parts, but you're not using those inventory parts maybe on the sales side and you're just purchasing it and you just keep building up your inventory account, those most likely probably should have been set up as non-inventory parts. So anytime it's had activity in it, you can't delete these inventory items. Probably would recommend, if you need to change it, put in something like a do not use and then save it. And then you would also want to make it inactive so that you don't keep using these erroneous accounts. And then you would probably want to create a non-inventory part if that's what you meant to do or should be doing in the future. The other biggest thing is these items are mapped to incorrect accounts. So one way you can get a report here. If you go to the item listing, this is going to have a lot of stuff on it. But then if you go to this customized report in the upper left, you can pick which filters you want in here, columns. You can kind of go through, and so would want to add the account, the asset account, and the cost of goods sold account. Hit OK. And here's where you can kind of look to see, okay, this is going to inventory asset, cost of goods sold account is going to the correct account, and then your income is going to the correct account. Probably should have thrown one in here that wasn't right, but so that's one way to kind of just get a report that shows it. An easier way might be to go to this list, add edit multiple list entries. And so here's a way, and this would also be for adding items and not just reviewing and editing. But here you can kind of go through and pick out which list you want to look at. So let's look at non-inventory parts here. So this one doesn't show all the different accounts, but if you go to this customized columns in the far right, similar to what we just did, you can pick and choose what you want to see here. So I'm going to move over this expense account in there. So here you can see income account, they're all going to income accounts, which is good. And everything's going to an expense account, which is good. Sometimes you'll see that where it's, you have the income over here and the expense over here. So this is where you would want to change all that, so anything in the future is getting coded correctly. So the mapping is definitely a big thing where you see if things are looking off your income or inventory or expense accounts, it's very possible due to this mapping. And this is also where, so if you're bringing in a bunch of new items from this screen, you can just, if you have an Excel sheet, you can just copy and paste right to this. So it's the easiest way to probably, from within here, to add or edit any transactions. So especially if you're just starting with QuickBooks, this would be a way to get things into it, like a customer listing or vendor listing, but also a way to review everything just to make sure everything's looking good is an area to go to also. Okay, so then, like I said a little earlier ago, just going through the group items and then these inventory assembly items, just kind of a little kind of breakdown of what the difference is, the big differences, I should say. So for a group item, you're never really getting rid of those components of a group item until you were to sell that item or put it on an invoice. So you always have those individual components sitting in your inventory accounts for when it's associated with a group item. So with a inventory assembly item, those individual components are getting removed from your inventory accounts and creating the final assembled item at the time you do the assembly of that. And then when you sell the assembled item, that's when that assembled inventory part is getting removed from your inventory accounts in QuickBooks. here. And I think I am going to switch over to the enterprise version right now. So bear with me a second. You could also ask if there's any questions at this time. Looks like Christina's got that under control. So thank you, Christina. Slowly but surely, I'm getting there. Okay, so next, just going over how to build an assembly. So in the enterprise version, you're going to have an inventory button here. Otherwise, it might be under vendors inventory functions in the Premier version. And then from inventory, building assemblies. I'm just going to do this open window list here. And I should have stayed in the Premier one for this because there is no assembly options. Just see something here. Yeah, I think I got in the wrong one here. Let me just as we're waiting here too, I think one thing I wanted to show too was kind of the area for where you can look at third-party apps for desktop. You can do this within QuickBooks too, but kind of this this shows all the different applications that can be used in QuickBooks to help anything that maybe QuickBooks has limited in or you're looking for. You can search by industry. So if you're looking for, manufacturing, any inventory management or other types of things, professional services, so some time tracking. So if you're lacking anything and just looking to see what else is out there for third parties, and these all link with QuickBooks, just something to be aware of. And that can also be found in this App Center also. So vendors, inventory. Okay, so this one's got one. So here you would go to this inventory door kit, interior door kit, and then it pulls up all the different components that were set up in that inventory assembly item that make this up. And it shows you how many are on hand at this time. Just want to make sure you pick the date correctly to use the date of assembly. And then pick how many to build. And then this will show you how much is needed of each of those parts. So if you pick too many, got this pop-up here saying does not have enough components to build this amount. And if that's the case, you can make it pending, which then you'll have these pending builds. Nice thing about that is the pending amounts, those quantities will be put towards those pending. So if you go to try to build another assembly, those will kind of be also blocked off due to that pending build. So you put a memo in if you need to. What this is, that's about the extent of the building assemblies. And you can, so then at that time, so here we built them. So kind of the back end information, and this is another tool that I use a lot. So if you're on any screen and you want to see what the back end journal entry is if you hit Control Y, it'll show you what's happening. And no, it's not letting me extend that. So here you can see it's basically taking all these individual inventory components and crediting inventory and then debiting inventory for your assembled item. So that's Control Y again if you wanted to look at that. And that works for any type of transaction. So if you're in a bill, you can hit Control Y and see what's getting expensed and accounts payable. So the other thing to note too, I guess, with the inventory items. So for QuickBooks Premier, everything's tracked on the average cost method. So it's pretty much whatever you're purchasing it for. And then if it changes in price, we'll just average all of that together. With Enterprise, you are allowed to do the FIFO method, first in, first out. But that is some of the limitations QuickBooks has with the inventory. So then let's say you need to disassemble some inventory or it was done improperly. Few ways to do that. You could go to your initial build and change the amounts that you build and then save it. You can do the adjust quantity value on hand, which we'll go through in a little bit. Or you can delete the build, but if you wanted any sort of history of that, that's probably not the route to go. Some of this timing issues, you might want to make sure you're not affecting any prior periods as part of this. The other thing too, if you're looking to see the listing of bill of materials for any of these inventory assembly items, there's no great way or easy way to do that. If you go to your item list, you go to the inventory assembly parts, and then in the edit area, this is really the place to see the full listing of that bill of materials. And if you want to print it, you can print it and it'll show everything there. Other than that, there's not a great way to find that. So then getting into adjusting inventory. So we never really like to do general journal entries for adjusting inventory because it'll throw off inventory counting within QuickBooks based on, because you're not going to be using these inventory part items. So this inventory items, you can adjust quantity value on hand. I'm just going to go back here. So here's where, the adjustment date, just keep in mind that's the date. Again, you probably don't want to do any prior period transactions here. This adjustment account is normally, should always be a cost of sales account and not an inventory account, because you're already adjusting the inventory down here. So if you pick an inventory account, it's pretty much just going to be canceling each other out. So this adjustment account should most likely always be a cost of sales or expense account here. And then you just pick out what item you want to adjust, and you're saying what the difference is, and then it'll pick an adjustment here. So again, the journal entry here is going to be reducing inventory by those $2 here and then expensing it to cost of goods sold. So if this is normally done, if you're any breakage or theft or obsolescence. So here they have 2 wood doors stolen from the job site. So when you do it in here, it makes sure all your inventory counts match and values will match. A journal entry won't affect those reports. So normally trying not to use any journal entries for those adjustments. So then getting into kind of seeing if your inventory counts are accurate or not, go to this inventory valuation detail report. So this is going to show you what the asset value is and kind of what you have on hand. So this is 12/15/23. So then if you go to your balance sheet, these numbers I think I adjusted something here. But so these numbers should tie the inventory amounts and then the inventory on your detail reports or summary reports. If they're not matching, it's normally due to either some journal entries being posted, or if you entered a bill and coded the expense directly to inventory, or any non-item used reports. And if that's the case, we can help determine what those differences are looking through everything. And also you normally don't want negative, if there's negative values on these reports, probably should be something that's reviewed and corrected or adjusted as needed. Then some of the other reports here are the inventory stock status. So this shows you kind of what's on hand, and currently this is at pending builds, what's set aside for these assemblies and what's available. So another report that can be utilized here for inventory. And then they also have, so this is when you're normally going to track it, they have these physical inventory worksheets. So this is, we normally like our clients to be doing physical counts at least periodically, at least once a year. So this is what you could print out to see, to do that physical count. Now this shows you what's on hand as of that date. If you're giving this to someone to do a physical count, you might not want to show this just because they might just be lazy and put those numbers in there or not. But it is a worksheet, so whatever works best. And if you want to get rid of certain columns, you can go through the customize and display again. So if you want to get rid of that. The thing to be careful about for these counts in QuickBooks is maybe some timing adjustments. So if you received items but haven't entered the bill yet, they're going to be, they're going to be in your warehouse or office, but they're not going to be showing up on here because the bill was never entered. And also if you shipped some items off or sold some of this inventory but haven't entered the invoice yet, it's not going to be reducing your counts here until that invoice gets entered. So then kind of going into that too, if you can receive, so if you received inventory but never got the bill yet, you can actually in here receive inventory without a bill. And then you can pull open up what's open right now, but put in a name, it'll show that there's open purchase orders. So you can kind of pick which purchase order these apply to. And then creating this item receipts. Save and close. So what that'll do is you received that flooring, so it will put that into, well, this is going to your job materials, but if you had it coded to an inventory account, and then it creates an accounts payable, even though the bill was not received yet. And then when you do get the bill, you can enter the bill against that inventory. So this pops up. And you can see that there's an item receipt out there. And you can use the item receipt date for the bill date or not. And then this will auto populate and you can put in the actual bill detail here, which then creates the accounts payable to an actual bill. So that's one way to enter that information if you have not received an actual bill for those parts. Any questions on that? Does not look like it. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the enterprise here. So then getting into job costing. So to create a job, so you'll see you have these customers, and then underneath them, here's some in the sample company are some jobs that are created underneath these customers. So it's, creating That's not what I want. I'm going to go into, which one do I want to go into here? So under the job, it kind of looks like the customer area. Just a few additional items for the jobs. There. Custom fields. But here's the job descriptions and the job name. So, you know, clients usually have their specific naming features on all their jobs. So we try not to steer anyone away from that. You know, sometimes we see, you know, a good naming function is usually taking the first 3 or 4 letters from the customer name and then adding some sort of numbering function to it, year, month, however it may be to track these items. But whatever works best for each individual customer here is good with us, as long as it helps or makes sense to everyone. So we're getting in, so then they have kind of these job types. Again, these are more for, you can filter reports or have a more sorted report by these items. So, and then same for job status, and this would have to be manually changed as it progresses through the job. So these are the 2 that you can see filtered in reports more than others. So once the job is created, for job costing to really be beneficial or work, there should be an estimate created for that customer job. I'm just going to go into so the estimate, you would put in all the specific items that you're going to be working on and selling, and then you put in what your estimate is. So this is what you project the cost to be of these items. And then on the estimate, you would put a markup in there for what your expected revenue is going to be on these items. So if we were to just quickly look at a report here. This is going to pop up. So we're going to look at Heather Campbell. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. So then if we go back to our estimate, we have all our estimated cost amounts and then our estimated revenue amounts. So then on this job estimates versus actual detail, you can see all the estimated costs and the estimated revenues here. So that's the first step for job costing, is just to make sure that you get that estimate in there to get an initial estimated cost and estimated revenue amount. Now there's also, so that's if you're using a markup on each line item here, which is the most detailed, and some people might not want to do that. So it's possible also if you just create another item, just did one real quick called builder's fee. And then you can put in, you know, what your markup is here. I'm just going to say 100,000. So in that case, you're not marking up every individual line item. You're just doing a flat markup on the bottom here. So if I save this, and we look at the cruise, So here it's going to just pop that builder's fee down here for your estimated revenue amount. So what way to simplify it here, because here the estimated revenue is just matching the cost when there was no markup there. So then when you're going through and actually assigning costs to these jobs, it's going to be as easy as, so when you're entering, say you're entering a bill, put in your normal expenses, and then in the customer column is where you would put which job you want to assign that cost to. And then you probably notice this billable box pop up every once in a while. So that's if you are going to be invoicing time and materials. So if this is checked, this would then pop up when you do an invoice to say, do you want to add this to the invoice to get reimbursed for these expenses? So if you're never doing that, it's probably never going to hit you. But if you don't invoice time and materials or get reimbursed for these items, can uncheck this box. So going through, so there's going to be this customer job column, pretty much in all the transactions you're working with. So if you just go through and assign those properly, just going to go back to the Heather Campbell example here. Where, so you have the estimated costs, and then you can see the estimated costs. So then this shows you, so this was a paycheck, so there was work involved on that, and for some reason my settings are off, it's not letting me click that. The other thing too, to make sure, so you would have to be using the same item types for these to go in these correct columns for the estimated cost for actual cost. So for this exterior trim and doors, when you're looking at the actual cost, you need to make sure on the bill that you're actually selecting that item. If the item is not selected, it would go down in kind of a, there would be no description at the bottom here. So then when you would go to invoice for these jobs, go back to this. You'll get a pop-up. Here's where it was asking if you want to add any of those billable time and cost. So if you're not doing this, just exclude these. If you do, you'll see. So all of these items will pop up and you can add these to the invoice if desired. Let's cancel that. So here's where you can add, I would have expected that to pop up. 1 second. And also in this reports area tab here, if you look at this transaction history button, this pops everything that's linked to accounts. So here you can see what the invoices were related to this estimate. So here you can look to see what the invoice is, and you can select which items you're invoicing for on that estimate. And save as needed and percentages of what you're invoicing for. And then that'll go over to your actual revenue account to be, so this estimated is matching the actual for that. So here you kind of get an idea, so your actual costs, estimated revenue, actual revenue, to see if you're on budget or not here for these job costing. So where it really comes into play is kind of if you're doing the percentage of completion method of accounting on these, and this is only going to be, so in the enterprise version, the report that comes into play here is this job WIP summary report. And so taking our Heather Campbell one into play. So you have your actual cost or your compared to your estimated cost. And that's how the percentage completion determines what the percentage complete is on each specific job. It's probably a bad example. So that's 100% done. So there's not anything to be done there. But if we were to look at the Albert Cruz kitchen remodel, so we see we're 64% done on that. So estimated revenue, so we take the 65% times the estimated revenue to get what our earned revenue is. And that's when you kind of see if you're over, under budget, and then it doesn't do the over, under billings adjustment for you, but this is the report that would be useful and helpful to determine what those adjustments are. So I think that's kind of a quick summary on the job costing here. Just a few other little things I just wanted to hit on that might not be utilized as much as they could be in QuickBooks is, and this is more for the owners, is probably more helpful than what us as accountants are looking at, but the company snapshot page, kind of a nice dashboard if you're looking to review anything, just graphs or pictures here to help, income and expense trends and see how income ties out or who owes money. And these can be customized as needed. Here you can add content. You can remove or add here on the different things you want to see. And there's there's one, just a total company snapshot, and then you have a kind of a customer snapshot page if you want to see, who owes you or kind of what the transactions are looking like here. Same for it's the customer snapshot too, but don't look at this very often, but it can be helpful, I think, for anyone looking for a summarized area to look at different things that they think are important. Same kind of goes for the vendor. So the bill tracker, everything, some people like to see things differently. This is an area where you can kind of see what your open bills are and none overdue or paid. But an area you can go in and you can kind of click here and go through and pay bills right from this screen. And the same goes for kind of customers, this income tracker. You can see kind of what's open, overdue. Some people like this color coding here. So just a few screens I thought I'd touch on here, just if anyone wants more information on that, they can look into it and feel free to reach out.